Right, and now I'm with Complete Family Medicine's Dr. Gillette. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well, except for that forecast today.
I know, right?
You know?
I know. All right, so we're here. He's here today to talk about ear infections, and typically, what is an ear infection, and when do we get them?
Yeah, it's a good question. An ear infection, first of all, there's two types of ear infections. Usually, when the public talks about an ear infection, we're talking about a middle ear infection. We refer to that as otitis media. There is another type of ear infection you can get. It's called otitis externa, and that's actually an infection of the ear canal itself.
Okay, and how do we get them?
Yeah, ear infections, it's kind of an interesting thing. So what happens is you have a tube that goes from your ear to your throat. And occasionally you can get some fluid built up in that tube, and bacteria or virus or whatever likes to kind of grow in that fluid, and that's how we start to get an ear infection.
Okay, and I noticed, a lot, I feel like when I was little, I had a lot of ear infections. Is there a reason why, it seems little kids seem to get them more often?
Yeah, there is actually. So when we're young and when we start out, our eustachian tubes, they start out pretty horizontal. And as we grow up, those things, they start to turn vertical. So you can imagine when they're more horizontal, that fluid that might be built up in that tube kind of stays there. But as they turn vertical, it starts to drain out a little bit easier.
All right, so how do we treat, middle ear infections and all this? Yeah.
So it all goes back to going to see your physician. We in the physician's office, we do a complete physical exam when somebody comes in with an ear complaint. We look at their blood pressure, their pulse rate, that sort of thing. We also take a good look in their ear with a special type of light to look in the back of their ear and look at that eardrum or tympanic membrane. Depending on what that looks like, kind of guides us to how we treat that. Sometimes it means we just wait. People can get over these things all on their own without any type of medicine. Sometimes, depending on how that looks, taken together with how the patient feels, if they're having fever, systemic complaints, or whole body complaints, we may need to give them antibiotics to get them over that.
Okay, and I think we just had a picture of the ear on. Yes, can you kind of explain some of, kind of what's going on in your ear?
Yeah, so like we talked about earlier, we have that tube. You can see the canal there that leads back to the eardrum, and then behind that you can kind of see that's your middle ear, and then there's that tube called that eustachian tube that leads to your throat.
Okay, and so why not just give someone antibiotics?
That's a good question. Always comes up in the doctor's office. For instance, my kid has an ear infection. I want to get them over it. They're hurting. Let's just give them antibiotics because antibiotics treat infections. First of all, ear infections can be caused by a virus, and so antibiotics are totally ineffective against a virus. Second of all, actually the American Academy of Pediatrics just came out with a new consensus guideline saying that we as physicians really need to take a closer look at these things because we may be over-treating with antibiotics. Sometimes we have to give antibiotics, but sometimes we just don't need to, and we like to kind of hold on to those antibiotics for more severe infection. If somebody's really sick, that way we can guarantee that the antibiotics is going to be 100% effective.
Okay, that makes sense. And how can ear infections be prevented? Is there a way?
There is, actually, believe it or not. So we talked about how sometimes you get that fluid build up behind in that middle ear space. Anything that kind of causes irritation to the upper airway, your nose, your throat, that type of thing, can set you up so you get more fluid in that space. So irritants, especially in young kids, exposure to secondhand smoke.
Really?
Yeah, it can cause that irritation and start that fluid buildup.
I didn't know that could be connected, or that was connected.
It absolutely is, and so we recommend, especially those kids that have parents that smoke, that parents take those cigarettes outside. Wear a smoker's jacket when they're smoking. Even the smell of cigarettes can cause that irritation back there.
That is so interesting.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have even thought of that.
So that's one of the best ways. Also, treating other irritations like allergies and stuff like that can help prevent them.
Okay, so during especially allergy season, is this when you see more children come in with?
You can. Again, it's all about that irritation. Certainly, if a child has allergies that are untreated, it can certainly lead to those ear infections.
All right, so first signs of an ear infection, what are you kind of feeling?
Again, that kind of depends on the person, depends on the kid. A lot of people say, a kid tugging on their ear or something, that means they have an ear infection. That's not true either. Sometimes that does mean they have an ear infection. Sometimes it doesn't mean anything at all. That's why it's real important you go and see your physician and have that middle ear kind of checked out and looked at.
And don't really wait too long.
Right. And then also keep in mind that even if they do have a little ear infection, it may not mean that they need antibiotics at all.
Okay. Well, perfect. Thank you so much for being
You're
here.
welcome.
And
Thanks for having me.
I'm going to be checking on my ears now.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Thank you so much.